Mr. John Nganga. Many people have questions that they may or may not ask, and they are not comfortable about asking about them. But before we talk about those many questions that the people want to know about, can you briefly tell us who is John Nganga and how did you come to venture into funeral business?
Well, John Nganga is a businessman. I call myself that because my business is in funeral business, and I help people who their loved ones have passed away to prepare to rest them. In other words, burial preparations and all that, all those arrangements. So that's what I do.
So was this your dream job, dream career?
Well, it was not a dream job. It's just how you go to college and you end up with a career which eventually you just make it yours. Because I don't think people dream to be what they are until you move on into college and get a course you like to do.
Yeah, growing up, I wanted to be a pilot, looking at the airplanes passing.
Yes, so that happens.
So, what was your dream job at first?
Well, I left Kenya years ago, coming to flying school, which I did.
Wow.
And I finished that, but there's always that love of something. Apparently, I don't think that was too much of my love. I think it was more of what do you call it? It was more of
like a stepping stone? Or?
Not even a stepping stone. It was not a career such. It was like a hobby.
Oh, okay.
And so it's a hobby. So it's what I like to do.
So do you
in
still
fact,
fly?
Yes. In fact, I just started my helicopter training. So I'm just just for hobby. I just
flying an airplane.
Yeah, I like to do it, but I don't like to be employed in it.
Wow. I wish I could have such a hobby.
I mean, it's just what you want to do. Some people have different hobbies.
So did you happen to fly airplanes?
Yes, I did. Yes, actually, as a matter of fact, I did. And I have friends who are now flying. Some of them are captains. You know, it's just a passion that everybody has.
So how did you move from being a pilot, flying airplanes?
After a while, everybody sometimes gets burnt out sometime. And I don't think, my blood has never been a person who is employed or told do this, be here this time, wake up at this time. And I always wanted to do something for myself. I'm not the individual who admires a car that is driven by a driver. I'm the individual who admires the owner of the car. So I want to be the owner, not the driver. So I've always had that mentality of wanting to be in the forefront, to do things and for people and be somebody versus follow somebody.
So did you have somebody in the funeral home business that encouraged you to own one?
Yes, I actually, when I finished school, I went for practicals in a corporate company which owns funeral homes. And I worked there for 14 years.
Wow.
Out of those 14 years, I stole a lot of information. I stole a lot of how business is done. And I use the word stole because you don't want to tell them that you want to learn this to move out.
Yeah.
So you learn how things are done. Eventually, I think after 14 years, of course, if you haven't learned anything, then you're not sharp enough. So after 14 years, I believed I had accomplished much. So I just left and went and started my own.
So you graduated from the school for airplanes, then you moved to another school for...
Yes, when you go in flying school, is more of licensing.
Okay.
So you get you get all licenses from private to commercial.
Okay.
And instruments, and you do all those things, whereby you can learn to fly the plane just by looking at instruments. We call it hood training. You wear a hood, you don't look there, you just look at the instruments. And you take off and you land looking at the instruments. Because that's how a plane flies. You don't fly a plane by looking outside. It doesn't happen like that.
I was wondering because I look at my screen, my opponent, and then, That's how I drive my car.
Oh yeah. But you see, what people don't understand is before you take off a plane, you do a lot of planning.
Wow.
You do flight planning. You have to know which route you have to go, and once you establish your flight planning, depending on the winds and the weather and everything, once you take off from the airport. The VFR, whatever radios, headings you are given. So if you are given, they'll be telling you throughout. They talk to you throughout.
Wow.
So even when you take off, when you're taking off, they tell you head runway 35R, which is right. So when you take off, you go right. And once you take off, they'll tell you go to heading 254, you change 254. That takes you, depending on your flight plan. So they keep talking to you and you keep going where they're telling you till you land where you're supposed to go.
One thing, one problem I encountered when I joined the Army, immediately I came to US. And I had problems understanding the instructions. You know, they talk, we talk too fast at times.
Yes.
And I had a problem listening to what they say.
Oh, we had a lot of people who quit flying, by the way, because they come here, they don't understand the American language. They get on the plane and they say, hey, this is Cessna 455, and the tower pilot say, what did you say? No, they can't understand. They just quit because half the time they can't understand each other. They won't let you go if you don't understand them.
Wow, I think we'll get more time and talk about.
Yes.
But now coming to tonight's topic, what specifically area did you major in?
I majored in forensic science.
Oh, forensic science.
Eventually, I ended up going to mortuary science.
Oh, they have a branch called mortuary science.
Yeah, you major in mortuary science. You can actually go to a school. There's a school in Dallas. There's a school in Houston. And nowadays, a lot of universities are starting to offer the mortician courses, which you can become a mortician and focus on just becoming a mortician. Before, we had to go through a lot of other medical classes just to end up there. But now you can actually do, I think now you can do a course for 18 months.
Wow.
To be a funeral director, to organize and arrange funerals and plan funerals. But if you want to go into embalming, that's a different area which will take longer, but it's available now in a in a lot of colleges. Actually,
we'll come to that. So 14 years working in Dallas for funeral homes. And how did you begin your business? Did you borrow a loan? Friends put funds together?
No, you know, I told people before, you know, only a moron gets a loan to start a business. You can't take a loan to start a business. You have to almost plan. You know, ni kujipanga. You have to plan yourself and know which way you want to go. So no, I didn't take any loan. After I left that place, I had saved a little bit of money. Of course, I was there for 14 years, even though they were not paying me that much money. So I saved a little bit of money, and then when I left, I still had a lot of people calling me because I knew I was in the business, even when I left that place, and I didn't have anywhere to go. But now I had met a lot of friends who owned their own businesses. So whenever friends could call me, I would go to my friends' places and operate from there and give my friends something and move on.
Wow.
So I managed to keep going until eventually.
What a wonderful way of living a place that people will come and follow you wherever you are. And what are some of the challenges you have faced since you opened this place?
I can't call them challenges. I don't think they are challenges. It's just the biggest issues is you get families that will call you to pick up their loved ones, and you do that, and then they don't have money, and you can't just keep holding somebody here for 3, 4, 5, 6 months. So you just end up doing it for them for free. We have a lot of foreigners meaning Kenyans, Ugandans, Tanzanians, Congolese, all these Africans, or even people from Mexico, Latin America. We also have people here in America that come and we pick bodies, and eventually they don't have the money. So they either have to donate to their loved ones to science, where there's no charges, Or like our Africans would do, they would just disappear and leave me with a body here. So I have to find a way to find who this person is, where their home is, and I've shipped quite a few from just wanting them to go home.
Wow.
Without knowing where they are coming from or where their families are from.
Not like where we come from. At times, people will leave their loved ones at the hospital, and they don't come. So, in such a case, you just help and ship them for free.
I have to, because what do you do?
I mean, that's a challenge. So,
it's not a lot of them, but what do you do? The few that have come here, yeah.
If our family, maybe one of our family members, the death has occurred, and we are away from home, what do you usually do? As it is the case, I think we are here in the US, we are away from home, and something happens. Maybe you take us through, somebody gives you a call, and then?
Yeah, somebody would call us, tell us, our loved one has just passed away, could you help? And there are different ways people ask. People will call and say, hey, how much do you charge for a funeral? And some people will call and say, how much is it to send to this place? So it depends how they approach you. But I've been teaching our people not to ask those questions, to come in first. Come in, sit down, so you can at least learn what the process might be before we even pick up your loved ones. So they'll come in, then I'll walk them through it.
So,
you know?
Yeah, in such a case, there are people who may ask, why is a funeral important anyway? Somebody may die, you leave him there, walk away.
Well, it depends with your culture, it depends with your religious belief, it depends with your customs. You'll be surprised. I've been in America for over 30 years, and I've seen Americans that call. Their mother has passed, maybe in a nursing home. They will tell us she's here, go pick her up. We pick her up. They call us on the phone. They say, we just want a cremation. Can you cremate her? We cremate her. They pay us, and they never come back. We never see them, and the ashes are sitting back there. They've never even come to pick up the ashes.
In such a case, you open a folder or a file?
Yeah, we open we file them up, but eventually, after so long, maybe 30, 90 days, there's no written number, we just make our number. We assume that is long enough to hold for you. We call you, we verify your address and where you live, and
you send.
We FedEx the ashes to you. Because that's your property, not ours.
Oh, sure.
You know.
Earlier on, I heard you talk about the funeral director. What does he do?
Well, funeral directors are the people who have been licensed to run funeral homes or to make arrangements with families. In the U.S., you have to be licensed to arrange funerals with the family. You can't just do it like that. You have to be licensed to run a funeral home.
Okay.
You have to be licensed to own one. Your funeral home has to be licensed. We have what we call Texas Funeral Service Commission, which commissions us and licenses us and inspects us. So this is not a business you wake up in the morning and just open and start running. It doesn't happen like that. And you have to be approved by the city, you have to be approved by the commission, you have to be inspected for them to say go ahead. So the funeral directors are individuals that are licensed to be able to make arrangements and organize funerals for families.
So in such a case, can individuals customize their funeral?
Yes, and that's what we do. Normally, I tell my people, don't ask how much. You come, tell me what you want. I'll customize it for you, and I'll give you a budget. And then if you say it's too much, we start removing some things to where you feel you're comfortable. So we just don't charge you what we want. We charge you what you can afford for what you want.
You also talked about embalming. What is it, and is it required for every death that occurs?
Well, embalming is an art of preservation.
Okay.
or in other words, in the layman language, it makes the body last longer before it starts decomposing or decaying.
Okay.
Embalming is a science we use in injecting formaldehyde in the human body while we take off the blood and all the other fluids. And when the formaldehyde goes in your body, it solidifies, and so you become stiff, and it slows decaying quite on a high percentage. It is not required by law. It's not required by law. You don't have to embalm your body. There are religions like some religions don't allow you to do embalming. Like the Jews, they don't even allow you to put it in a metal casket or a casket with nails. They just want everything to be wood. So there's some things you don't do. So for some other people, so it's your belief, it's what you want to do. We just let you understand that if we want to ship this body out of the country or fly it out, we have to embalm it, because the airline might require that. But if you want to get it there in any other way, you can. But if you want to fly somewhere, you have to have it embalmed, but it is not by law.
Wow. That's too much.
Yeah.
We also talk about there is a time for viewing, visitation. I hear you talk about work and also memorial.
Yes.
What happens during these services?
What we try to do is we try to make the family get enough time for grieving. A lot of people don't grieve because they don't give themselves time to grieve. So when you come to us and you want us to do a funeral for you, we have more than one session where you come in and you view. We try to make sure you have 2 or 3 sessions. And the first session normally is for you to come in, and once you come in, we call it a first viewing, where you come in and we let you see your loved one, just either a small group of family members. If there's any correction, maybe to fix your hair, maybe to do your makeup, maybe to fix your clothes, you tell us what it is that you like, and we can go ahead and change it at that point. That is your first visit. Then on Friday, maybe if the funeral is on Saturday, you come back on Friday. That's what we call a wake or a visitation. Anybody can come in, you do a viewing, you visit with your loved one. After that, tomorrow we have a service where we take the body to the church. Now at that point, since you've seen him 2 or 3 times, by the time you get to church, you're comfortable. It doesn't hit you as hard as when you just come in the first time. And that's what is important about those visitations before the funeral. It helps a lot.
So when death occurs, how long can a family wait before it can come for a visitation?
It depends how fast they move. Some people will bury in 3 days. Some people will keep the body. We've kept the body here for 6 months.
Oh, wow.
So it just depends. It depends how quickly they want to do it. But as soon as we pick them up, we'll ask the family to come in so we can agree on the mode of burial. If you want to bury, cremate, if you want to, whatever you want to do, then we do some paperwork. We'll let you know how much it's going to cost you. You know, and then after that, then you can give us dates on when you want to do the burial.
Whenever death occurs, there's a lot of confusion. Some people are facing it for the first time, and maybe even if it's second or third time, people are always hit hard. So do you have special services you offer? Maybe let's talk about advice, such like things.
Yes, like I said, the first thing we ask them is if they can come in. The reason we're asking you to come in so we can assure you that you don't have to be stressed, you don't have to be worried, we will take care of everything. And it's true, when people come here and they sit down and we talk to them, they can even tell you that we feel like now we are relaxed. Because we take over everything. We take over all the arrangements. Sometimes we tell the people, the family, all we need from you is tell us when you want the service and the burial. Don't worry about anything else. We take care of everything. So the families kind of feel comfortable with that.
And it happens that at times after the service, there are still families that need support after the funeral program. So what do you do in such a case?
We have resources. We have different resources. Even our website will lead you to where you can get help. You can get counseling. If you want, you can come talk to us. We will give you counseling. We'll let you know if it's younger kids, you can bring your kids. We'll talk with them. We'll give you resources to where to go, who to talk to. And most of those resources are actually free. So you don't have to worry about paying for them. You know, we take care of all that for you. But a lot of people will put that away. We get very few people who come back for counseling and preparing you to live without your loved one. You know.
Yeah, depending on the manner in which the death occurred.
Yes.
Some people may be undergoing some traumatic experience, maybe stress and such like things.
Right.
So maybe they need some pieces of advice. People go to a grieving period. Yeah, it depends.
And we have that, and that's why we tell them to come in and talk to us. You know, we just don't take your money and bury your loved one and kick you out. We are more of a professional business. You know, we don't just do funerals.
You know, we have stereotyping and some dogmas in in our day-to-day life. So most people don't want to talk about death. So are you able to assist with the families who wish to pre-plan their funeral during this time when they are alive?
Yes, we do give you advice on pre-planning. I have a saying that there's dying and there's death. And dying is not when you're in the bed dying. Dying is while you are living. You are dying every day. And you have to prepare for your death or after your death. I remind people that if you are the breadwinner of the home, when you die, those bills are still going to come. The bills are not going to stop. The responsibilities are not going to stop. Your kids will still want to go to that school. So instead of waiting for that problem, now that you're dying, prepare for it. I tell people there's life insurance, which you can get into and prepare, and you can get up to $1 million, and some of these insurances will not cost you. The most it will cost you, depending on age, is probably $50 a month. You can get as low as $8 a month on life insurance, or maybe $100,000 or $200,000. It depends which you get. That's one thing you can do. The other thing is you can come and do what we call a pre-need. A pre-need is preparing in case something happens. And our cultures, Africans, is very hard to do that.
One thing is that when you do that, maybe you're going to die.
Yes, people think you're going to die. But let me surprise you. The Americans, a lot of these Americans, I used to think they are weird. But they will make those arrangements. Some of them have even brought us clothes. We have clothes sitting here and the people are still living. Wow. People have made sure if I die, these are the clothes you put me in. They pick the casket, they pick where they'll be buried, they have paid for their cemetery. And they tell us when I die, just pick me. They'll call you, you come get me, you do A, B, C, D. Don't even have to meet with them. And we have files here, we have files that have been signed by them. So there's that program called pre-need. You can get into, you can get in life insurance, you know, or you can start preparing with a will. And I tell people with a will, you don't have to go to a lawyer. You can write a will by yourself. And you can divide your things if you have things. And you can have a notary public or a lawyer stamp it or sign it for you. And you can leave it with whoever you believe in. So when something happens, everything is divided to whoever you want to leave it to. The problem is our people just die bila plan. Then you become a problem to other people. You know, so yeah, there's different ways. As a matter of fact, we have started a program called African Welfare.
What does it do?
Welfare is a provider of services to the diaspora members. So if you want to apply, you can apply for it. You can go online, Africa Welfare Association, apply for it. It will give you costing. In case you want to do a single individual or you want to do a single family, then we'll give you the prices. And the prices up there are very affordable, and I keep encouraging our people to get them. They'll pay for everything, and the premiums are very low. You can pay as low as $100 a year, and you're covered for $50,000.
Wow.
So take advantage of it and get it.
That's good.
Yes.
But people fear, you know, once you...
trust me, you're dying every day, so there's no point of fearing.
Once you join, somebody will take care of you and then maybe get the funds. They'll make sure they pay all the bills. Okay. Yeah. So during this COVID-19 season, do you have a COVID-19 policy?
We did, not anymore. Even though we have to take precautions every day. There's political rules and regulations going on apart from the World Health Organization rules. But anyway, we still take seriously that COVID is still around, and we have to take precautions regardless. The numbers, of course, have slowed down, which have made some people relax. But I always tell people, you know, when you have the pain, just try to live like the pain is there. But if you try to ignore it, it might get worse. So, yes, we have tried to make every change we can to accommodate the problem. We used to minimize the numbers, like in our chapel for visitations. We have increased that just a little bit more. We do not restrict families from getting close to their loved ones anymore like we used to, but they have to be cautious that the disease is still out there.
In case there are individuals who cannot come to see their family in person, is there any way that they show their support?
Yeah, we have streaming, we have videos, we have all this we provide, which is a unique thing to do for families who can't come. It's available and it stays on YouTube. You can always watch it or send it to your friends who didn't see or who couldn't come. They can watch it later. Yes, we do.
One other, let me call it a challenge to the African diaspora. You know, our culture, most cultures say that once I die, maybe in my will, I want to be taken back home, or our people want me to go back home so that they can give me the cultural burial, let me call it like that. So which ways do you assist these people to ship their loved ones?
We do everything. We make arrangements, paperwork arrangements with the embassy, airline bookings. We do all this planning, and we make sure we ship the body home. For instance, I'll give you an example. For Kenyan people, and I'm from Kenya, that's why I say that. They need to thank God that some people like us are around, because we make it very easy for them. And what we do is we give them a package that goes from here, where the person dies in the U.S., whatever state or city it is, up to the village.
Wow.
And we have what we call a bronze package, which is about 11,665. That will take the individual from wherever they are to Nairobi, from Nairobi
to the village, through
Lee Funeral Home to the village.
Wow.
We don't turn around until you are in the hole. That's when we turn back.
This is a continuous segment. I'll come back for more. I know
you are welcome.
There is a lot to talk while we are alive. So what's your last word to my viewers and my Kenyan people and diaspora?
Let me remind them this. Death and dying are two different things. Death is when you have died, dying is when you are living. Don't assume dying is tomorrow or the next day when you get sick. Dying is now. And this is when you need to take precaution and prepare for yourself. There's no other dying. You don't wait to die tomorrow. Dying is right now. Remember that.
Do you usually advertise like another business? Because we do advertisement for other businesses.
No, we don't advertise funeral business.
Yeah, so how do you get your referrals maybe?
Word of mouth, referrals, people will come back. For every funeral we do, there's 200 people in that funeral.
Oh yeah.
We do a good job, 10 of them will call us, and they always call us.
So for people, maybe, you know, you never know when you need this service. So if somebody wants to reach you, do you have contact numbers or a website where they can reach you?
Yes, we are on our website, bedfordmemorialfuneralhome.com. You go there, you find all our phone numbers, our email address, and you can reach us anyhow, 24/7.
Thank you, Mr. John. I know you are very busy. I want to personally thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
You see calls are coming in and out.
Yes,
and,
all the time.
and,
Never busy enough for you, though.
I see you are also doing some other, you're shipping to Congo, I heard.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so I want to thank you for this time, and we will be back.
You're welcome anytime.
Barikiwa and God bless you.
Thank you so much.